How was the history of India formed? Why is India's population so high and increasing day by day? What civilizations have emerged and disappeared in this country? Why are there so many different religions in India? Which side was India on during World War I and World War II? How is it possible to live in such a country? These are the questions we aim to answer in today's video and to add to our knowledge. India, a subcontinent surrounded by oceans on three sides and by mountains and vast deserts on the other side. A vast country with an area of about 3.4 million square kilometers and a population of over 1.43 billion people. You might ask yourself, what has happened that this country has such a high population? Let's go back to the early history of India, where the first human civilizations were formed due to the existence of abundant rivers that created fertile lands in this subcontinent. The vast expanse of this region also had a direct impact on the birth of these civilizations. Now, the main question is, where did the humanity that formed these civilizations in India come from? In fact, the first Indian civilization was the Indus Valley Civilization, of which we do not have much information. We only know that they had their own writing system and urban system, and they disappeared around 1500 BC. After this civilization, the Aryans who passed through the north of the Caspian Sea and Iran entered this region from the north and northwest of India and formed the Brahmin civilization. This civilization created the caste system that still exists in India today. A system that divided people into 5 classes: priests, warriors, traders and farmers, servants, and finally, the Dalits or untouchables. After this civilization and following the invasion of Alexander the Great to Iran and the fall of the Achaemenids, the Maurya dynasty was founded, a dynasty that was on par with the Roman Empire. At the beginning of this dynasty, Buddhism also entered India. Around the 8th century, Muslims entered this country, overthrew the Gupta Empire, and Islamized some of the areas around the Indus River. In the 13th century, 1220 AD, the Mongols emerged, and their generals attacked the northern areas of India several times. After the Mongol invasion of India and the formation of the Delhi Sultanate, this region was ruled by small states until the early 16th century, when Babur founded one of the largest empires, the Mughal Empire in India. This empire remained powerful until Nader Shah's invasion and was considered one of the most powerful governments of that time. But after multiple invasions by Nader Shah Afshar and the weakening of this empire, Britain took full control of India, and one of the biggest historical events known as the East India Company occurred. The East India Company was essentially a British joint stock company that entered India for trade and commerce with the permission of first Queen Elizabeth. Initially, this company had a 15-year license, but later became the most famous and successful joint stock company in England. This license granted the company full trade monopoly with India from Britain. At the beginning of the company's entry into India, the weakened Mughal Empire and the rule of various Nawabs in the region allowed the East India Company to eliminate its competitors like France and Portugal and then install Indian Nawabs in its favor to seize power. They also brought their military forces into this country. After a while, this company even dismissed its puppet Nawabs and took full control of the power. The taxes collected were entirely in the company's hands, and a small portion of these taxes was given to the king, with the rest going into the company's pockets. Then, in the mid-19th century, the British government took control of this country from the company and declared it a part of the British Empire. This colonization continued until the first Indian independence movements formed in 1857. At the beginning of this movement, a group of soldiers first revolted, and then the people joined them. During this period, The 82-year-old Bahadur Shah took the responsibility of commanding these movements and said that he was only fighting for independence. And he wrote letters to various groups like the army, craftsmen, and landowners to join this uprising and expel the British from India. Several decades after this uprising, and with the increase in political awareness among the Indian people, 73 representatives of India helped establish the Indian National Congress. In 1915, Mahatma Gandhi, a political and legal activist, returned to India and launched a series of campaigns under the slogan of driving the British out of India. By 1947, India finally became independent, and Gandhi was assassinated by one of the extremist Hindus. Regarding World War I and World War II, the British Empire used the weapons and ammunition it had brought to India, as well as Indian soldiers, to participate in its wars. In World War I, 1 million Indian soldiers, and in World War II, 2.5 million Indian soldiers participated in the battles for this empire. India, throughout its history, has been attacked and invaded by European colonizers numerous times, but despite this, it was able to separate itself from these military and cultural invasions and achieve independence on multiple occasions. These events, along with the large population of this country and their extensive cultural interaction with other governments, could be the reason for the existence of various religions in this country. However, with all these factors, does it still seem reasonable to live in such a country? India has a gross domestic product, GDP, valued at $2,689,992 trillion. You might ask yourself, well, that's a huge number, so why is there so much poverty among the people of India despite such an income? The answer to this question is the vast population of this country, such that the share of each Indian individual from this income is very small. The costs of education and living in this country are much lower compared to other countries. Costs such as food and rent are relatively minimal, but even so, living in India does not seem reasonable because, as you probably know, the hygiene in this country is really poor. You can clearly see people living in the dirtiest conditions on the streets of India. Overall, India is a country recommended as a destination for a short and diverse trip, but we can never see this country as a place to move and live permanently.